Welcome to the MS&Me Radio Network, a division of the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network. The following program broadcast is an original creation by the broadcast entity. Discussion within the following broadcast should be used for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional medical advice or consultation. Before considering application of any broadcast content in the following program, please consult your healthcare provider. If you feel you are having a medical emergency, please contact your local health services for immediate assistance. MS&Me Media and the Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network do not guarantee or warrant the accuracy of information in the broadcast to follow. The Multiple Sclerosis Global Support Network provisions broadcast services to program hosts. Information discussed in the broadcast does not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or goals of the network and are solely those of the show broadcast host. Should you wish to host a broadcast, please visit our website at msmemedia.com and submit a request to become a program host. We thank you for listening to the MS&Me Radio Network. Enjoy the show.
How's it going? Welcome to YEG MS episode number 25. And in this episode, I'm on a boat, mother. I didn't say it. I thought about it. You know that song from about 7 years ago, I'm on a boat. That's what I was thinking. But in this episode, I decided to record the bulk of it while I was kayaking in a lake. You'll notice when that segment starts that some of the audio may seem like it was highly edited, and it was. I had to redub short pieces of the vocals because I ended up with some wind, and wind noise is really, really tough to get out of audio. But for the most part, it turned out pretty good. I was out at the cabin last weekend, and I thought it'd be interesting to... I don't know why, but I thought it'd be interesting to record while I was kayaking. And I also did it because when I post the stuff to YouTube, you have to have either pictures or video. So now it's got some sort of first-person perspective of somebody kayaking in the middle of a lake. So there you have it. Interestingly enough, while I'm recording this right now, it's Tuesday night, just after the long weekend here in Canada, just after the Labor Day long weekend. And this coming Friday, I'll actually be driving to Hinton, Alberta, right near Jasper, for the MS mountain bike in support of the Multiple Sclerosis Society of Canada. This is the first time I've done the MS bike tour, the MS mountain bike. Which is very similar to every other MS bike tour, except for you ride up and down a mountain for 2 days. And the great part about that for me is a number of guys that I graduated from high school with in Kamloops, BC in 1994 have graciously agreed to meet me in Hinton and take part in the ride. And these are guys that I used to mountain bike with when I was 16, 17, 18. And here we are 20 odd years later doing it again. I'm pretty sure somebody's going to get hurt. My goal for the weekend is to not go over my handlebars. No guarantees. I'm going to have a real sore backside because I really haven't been doing a lot in the way of bike riding recently. I run a lot, but I don't... it's the trick with the cycling, and the only time I usually ever ride my bike every year is usually just for the MS bike tour. I'm not a huge cyclist. I really do enjoy mountain biking, but the biggest thing is really just training your saddle to get used to it. And, I best intentions, right? I mean, I started out in the summer thinking I was going to ride 50K a week, no big deal, and I rode my bike twice. Really hoping the conditioning from running takes over. I have a feeling I'm going to be pretty sore. But anyways, it should be a really good time, We rented a small cabin, and I've been really looking forward to this weekend for a long time. We've planned it, this has been, I think we started planning this in either like May, and it's going to be great to see these guys, so looking forward to that. Other news that has nothing to do with MS. My daughter started grade 1 today, and I really didn't think it was going to affect me all that much, but man, was I wrong. Her mom took her to school this morning, and was able to snap a picture before she left, and it, where does 6 years go? It's really funny that as a parent, time just flies by, my son's 4, my daughter's now 6, and neither one of them is a baby. And, Belle's going into grade 1. Jonah's starting his second year of preschool. I'm really starting to feel old, I guess. And, I remember when I was a kid, a summer, that 2 months in the summer took... A summer when I was a kid is a year now. Sorry, flip that around. The summertime, the amount of time I experienced, I actually mentally experienced in a year, now as a 40-year-old man, feels about the same as a summer did when I was 8, 9, 10, 11 years old. And it's mind-blowing in a lot of respects. It really, truly is. And it just seems like time it goes too fast. It really, really does. But I'm happy to report I took my kids out for dinner tonight after their mom went to work. And, Belle seemed pretty happy about her class. She's really excited. She's got some friends in her class. So, it's all good. I mean, everything's great, but man, it's tough to see your babies grow up, and you want the best for them, and you want them to grow up, but at the same time, sometimes you wish that it would just slow down just a little bit. And I'm having that go through my head quite a bit this week. So, but anyways, coming up here in just a couple seconds is me on a kayak talking about some stuff I found in the news. And if you want any of the links to any of this stuff, it'll be in the companion notes on allmultiplesclerosis.com. And I would appreciate feedback on any of the stuff I talk about. Agree, disagree, like, dislike, whatever. And if you actually want to see the video that I took while I was recording, look up YEG MS on YouTube. And while you're there, give it a like. Maybe even subscribe to it. And give us a like on Facebook at allmultiplesclerosis.com. Anyway, here's me on a kayak. Welcome to the YEG MS podcast, also broadcast on MS&Me radio. If you hear some paddling in the background, or you hear some waves, it's because I'm sitting in the middle of a lake on a kayak. I thought I'd try something a little bit different this time for the show. Now you can watch it on YouTube. I have a head cam strapped to obviously my head, and you can kind of get a perspective of what I'm seeing. So on the show today, kind of 3 things that I noticed in the news that I want to talk about. The first of which I found fascinating. I don't know if you saw this in the news, but the Supreme Court of not North Korea, certainly not North Korea, the
Supreme Court of South Korea has recently ruled in favor of a worker for the Samsung Corporation, and this worker worked in one of their LCD TV and screen plants. 32-year-old woman by the name of Lee Hee-jin. And the Supreme Court of South Korea overturned a lower court ruling and stated that Jin, and here's a quote, diagnosed with MS should be recognized as having an occupational disease. And the article that I read, this was from CBS News out of the United States, seems to suggest that isopropyl alcohol and exposure to it may have led to her diagnosis. Now, I could have misread that, but I found it fascinating because it's, I've never heard of anyone being able to claim MS as a workplace disease or have their diagnosis at any way related to where they work. And I've never heard, this is the first time I've ever heard of isopropyl alcohol being related to MS in any fashion. So, yeah, I found that really, really fascinating. And, the CBS News story, I wish there was more detail because I would have really liked to dig into it, and I think I will in the future to find out if my interpretation of what I read was correct. But if you're interested in reading it, the link will be on the companion note to this podcast on ownmultiplesclerosis.com. Every time I release an episode, whether it's broadcast on the MS&Me radio network or just as a regular podcast through SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, or iTunes, there's always companion notes to each episode. And for most of the episodes, there's extra links so that you can basically fact check me and see where I got the information and decide for yourself if it's any use to you. But fascinating story. I mean, can you imagine having a high court somewhere in the world rule that somehow multiple sclerosis should be considered, in this particular instance, an occupational disease? I found it absolutely fascinating. Another thing I wanted to mention is that a study that was published in the August 30th issue of Neurology is shown that the virus that causes mono may increase MS risk for multiple races. And of course, that the virus that causes mono is the Epstein-Barr virus. And I'd heard in the past, I know I've read in the past, that if you've had mono in the past, your MS risks were higher. So I don't think this is particularly new, but what was new about this study, and it was done with just over 1,000 participants, is they looked at all races, so whether you were Hispanic, Black, White, Asian, and they found that the risk was the same. But the key here seems to be is if you develop mono, either as a teenager or early adult, your risk goes up. And if you had mono as a younger child, the risk doesn't seem to be as great. Now, every time I read something like this, I always try and qualify it in my own life and wonder, okay, is this something that I had, or does this apply to me? And for me, when I was about 20 years old, I developed mono, and I remember it because I was living at home and going to university at the time. And it was probably the sickest I'd ever been. And I just remember sweating and sweating and sweating, and my mom would come down, get me to stand up, change all my blankets because they were soaked from me sweating. And this went on for a few days, and then it cleared up, and I didn't think anything of it. Other than, they cleared up and move on with your life, right? Well, 10 years after that came the MS diagnosis, so I definitely have had mono, so I would fit that group. And I often wonder, like, what everyone else's experience is. Did you have mono? Have you worked in an LCD factory? Because we don't know there's no definitive answer as to what causes it. It's always interesting to see. Which brings me to the next thing I wanted to mention is there was an online report in the U.S. News and World Report website, and it was an op-ed piece by a doctor by the name of Dr. Robert Vermel. And he was talking about the use of big data with relation to MS and other neurological disorders and how in the future that may help. And if you're unfamiliar with big data, I'm sure most of you listening are familiar with the Brad Pitt movie Moneyball. And what Moneyball is based on, I mean, the movie's, a Hollywood version of a true story. It's based on a book called Sabermetrics, and the guy who wrote it, his name escapes me right now, but you could certainly look it up and figure it out. And actually, so I think his name was Bill James. And it was either in the late 70s or in the 80s. He had written a book about using statistical data in baseball to maximize a team's performance. And of course, the Oakland Athletics and the character that Brad Pitt plays did indeed use those techniques, and that they've applied to other sports as well. Because in hockey, the main sport that I pay attention to, sabermetrics and big data, and that analytical approach to sport has become a regular part of the hockey lexicon. And it's but essentially what it is, it's using large amounts of data to try and better predict future results. So they use it in baseball, they use it in hockey, I'm sure they use it in basketball, I'm sure they use it in football. But how does that apply? But big data is not just relegated to professional sport. It can be used for anything. So, back to the last example I talked about with mono. With the computing power increasing exponentially the way it has been over the last 20 years, and the available data stream, if neurologists,
Other folks could put that all together and start looking for trends. For example, if every time someone was diagnosed with MS, they were asked a question like, did you ever have mono? How old were you when it happened? Was it combined with cigarette smoking? How about alcohol? They could also look at dietary information and combine everything and attempt to identify trends. So maybe it's diet, maybe it's cigarettes, or maybe it's a combination of a number of factors. The thought that ran through my head was, and I don't know if everybody remembers this movie, but the 1989 Michael Keaton, Jack Nicholson Batman movie. Jack Nicholson plays the Joker, and he terrifies Gotham City by poisoning the residents. And when they would die, they would end up with giant smiles on their faces. And of course, it's Batman who discovers the code, or discovers that it's not one product which was poisoned, but several, and they had to be consumed together to poison the victims. And if I remember correctly, it was beauty products, so hairspray and shaving cream, or toothpaste and mouthwash, or there's several different basically ingredients, but in this case they were products that produced the result of somebody dying, and in post-mortem they'd end up with this giant Joker-like grin on their face. That was the thought that, reading this conjured in my head.
Ridiculous example to use, but I think you understand where I'm going with this. Is it possible that MS is the result of a variety of things all coming together? Could it be genetics combined with the latitude of where you live, combined with your diet, combined with maybe the getting mono as a teenager was the trigger that caused that path. And for me, it's fascinating to look at. I mean, I found that being somebody diagnosed with the disease and without a lot of answers, I find it very cathartic to do research on my own and at least try and get a better understanding for myself. What's potentially happening with me and others like me. Further to that story, I'll quote the doctor here in his final. Before I should do that, I should mention one of the reasons why he wanted to take this analytical big data approach is that currently the United States Food and Drug Administration, which is of course different than here in Canada, but most of the same drugs that are approved in the US are approved in Canada and vice versa. But anyway, the Food and Drug Administration in the United States currently has over 14 disease-modifying therapies approved for the treatment of MS. And myself, I've used two. I used, not Rebif, Copaxone for about 2 years. And then my neurologist switched me off that to Tecfidera, and I've been on Tecfidera probably for another 2 years now, maybe a little longer. And if they could put all the people that are taking the different DMTs in to a database, and then they could start looking at it from, okay, well, so maybe Copaxone works
best for women between the ages of, I don't know, I'm just using examples here. This isn't real, but maybe, women between the ages of 25 to 36, where Tecfidera works best for men between the ages of, say, 30 to 40, and so on, and so on. Just by looking at the populations that are using the DMTs and their success rates, can you imagine if there was a database like that, how hugely valuable that would be? I don't think looking or studying any data would be a bad thing, and comparing that data to get a clear picture of what's working for different people. Well, here we are from the author's perspective. Here's the
final sentence of the article. Supplementing subjectivity with truly objective data-driven insights may help solve the mysteries of neurological diseases and lead to better patient outcomes. And I think that's the last little bit is the key, better patient outcomes. Because I know getting diagnosed is terrifying, because nobody can tell you a whole lot. But wouldn't you feel a little bit better if, say, you're a 35-year-old lady, or sorry, I shouldn't say lady, 35-year-old woman, and your neurologist sitting in front of you, and they can say, you know what, out of 15,000 patients, we have 15,000 patients with your same basic profile, 35-year-old woman, non-smoker, had mono when they were 18. This has been the most successful treatment, where we've seen the least amount of disease progression. Wouldn't that give you a lot more comfort? It would for me. Just say, okay, well, this has worked for the majority, I'm in. But that could even apply to, alternative therapies. And I don't want to just talk about the pharmaceutical approach. Let's say
that you're on one of the numerous MS diets, and there was a database which said, hey, for people with your profile, eating a gluten-free, soy-free diet and supplementing with these vitamins has shown this success rate. Or people who do that and combine it with a regular exercise program have shown this success rate. Wouldn't that for you as a patient give you a tremendous deal more comfort? I think it would. It certainly would for me. Now, I can't speak for everyone, but it would give me a lot more confidence in what the doctor was telling me. So yeah, those are the 3 items I wanted to talk about this week. As always, if you want to be part of YEG MS, if you want to be a guest, if you want me to read a letter, if you want to send me some notes, reach out to me. You can reach me anytime at Sean, S-E-A-N, at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. That's Sean at OWNmultiplesclerosis.com. You can also read the companion notes for this podcast, which is episode number 25, on my blog at ownmultiplesclerosis.com. That way you can fact check me or read the articles that I'm referencing, so you can make the decision for yourself. I mean, I'm not here to claim that I have any miracle cures or that I know more than your neurologist, because I certainly don't. I mean, I'm just a voice on the internet, and I think anyone listening should really dig into this stuff themselves. It's really important, I think, that you do, and that you're comfortable with the information that you're consuming. And as mentioned from the outset, if you want to see what it was like, want to see what perspective I had as I was paddling around the lake while I was recording this, you can search YEG MS on YouTube. You can also find YEG MS on SoundCloud, Stitcher Radio, and you can also find it on iTunes. And as always, this is also being broadcast on the MS&Me radio network. So I hope you enjoyed the episode. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon.